Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Coaching Call podcast. On this podcast, we'll cover various types of coaching by trainers in sports, martial arts, fitness, and business. We'll discuss each coach's methods to getting the most out of their respective athletes or clients and how they attempt to change the platform in which they coach. Join us on a fun adventure as we discuss unique coaching styles. Coaching is a universal part of how we get others to get something done. Join your host, Rafael, and his guests on this unique journey in coaching.
Hi, I'm Sifu Rafael, and this is the Coaching Call podcast. If you enjoy this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. This episode was made possible by listeners like you. Good morning, Rob. Thank you so much for joining me on Coaching Call. How are you today?
I'm great, Sifu, and I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited you're here too. We have so much to talk about. I'm super excited because we talked a little bit earlier, and you bring a different view, if you will, to what people can do in life, and I love that. But before we get into what you're actually currently doing, I want to know about you. Let's get to know you a little bit. Tell me where you grew up. Who influenced you before the age of 10 even?
So I grew up outside of Philadelphia, and what really influenced me growing up was pop culture. So I was just a pop culture sponge, and I was always fascinated just by interesting people doing interesting things. I've always been a lover of music and always been fascinated by that. I think, I grew up, in the Northeast in the 70s and 80s, and that was kind of the time where you didn't really go into the cities very much, as a child, but I was always so fascinated by that. And like, even today, like that shapes me so much today, because anytime I see anything about, true crime in the 70s and 80s in a big industrial city like Philadelphia or New York or Boston, like literally the day it comes out, I will clear my calendar and I will watch it. So, really pop culture influenced me in a really, really, really large way. And I'm a rather introverted person. So it was kind of I knew I always had it in me to be, to be a social person, but I didn't necessarily know how. And pop culture was my escape to be like, I can be that sometime, like watching music videos and things like that. Those really had a big influence on my life, from a really early age.
Mm. What was your favorite singer when you were around that time, or group?
There were probably 3 or 4 that I really liked before the age of 10. I would say 1 was Wham, 2 was Madonna, and 3 was Michael Jackson. They were probably the 3 that I did. The very first cassette I owned was Thriller, and wore that thing out on my tape recorder, pretty quickly. Listened to that thing, over and over and over again. So I would say those 3 were probably the biggest influences. And then obviously George Michael went into his solo career right when I was about 10. You said before 10, I would have said George Michael otherwise, but I was always a lover of Wham as well.
Oh my God, George Michael, what an incredible voice that man had. And such a shame that we lost him so early. It's very interesting. I used to go to Manhattan to a nightclub, and it was called Circus. It was a nightclub, right? It was 3 floors. Whoop, there goes my crazy. And here's the fun thing: Madonna used to hang out there. So
How cool.
it was pretty interesting, and it was a very exclusive type of place. But it was 3 floors, and it was so much fun. And it literally was a circus. You had so many different celebrities there. You had so many people who were wannabe celebrities who actually became celebrities. Like Madonna, when she used to go there, she was not a celebrity then. And sometimes she would do things, and it was pretty interesting. But consider that you said you were introvert and you didn't know, you understood about the social aspects of it, yet you didn't know how to get there, how to do that part. But pop culture really helped you engage. it's almost like living through someone else, right?
It is. I think I was drawn to the fact that in some way a lot of those not that they were misfits, that's the wrong term, but they
Right.
had this edge to them. They weren't like everybody else. And I think I was always kind of drawn to that was how do I didn't know, when you're 8, you don't know how to be an individual per se.
Mm.
And when you see these other people are like, that's cool, that's interesting. Gosh, I love seeing these great photo shots of these celebrities with just other random people around them. And it's really glamorous and it's really fun. And these people probably did not grow up, as the football quarterback or the head cheerleader or any of those things. They were just, regular people that, had the drive and the ambition and the talent and the purpose to, make something more interesting of their lives than especially with Madonna and George Michael, than what the towns they grew up in really would have provided for them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Did you ever like sing in your room, blast the music? I mean, I did. You know, like try to do their dances or like even dress like them. I think a lot of kids did, and right, especially for the girls, Madonna. I mean, wow,
Yeah.
what a culture shock it was to the parents, if you will. And then even like Michael Jackson and Wham, and everybody wanted to be like them, right?
They did. I didn't. I would sing, but I was an extremely off-key singer. Like I had a dog named Grover growing up, and the dog would poor Grover would sometimes howl when I sang because I was just really, really bad. So for me, a lot of it was listening to it and listening to the radio. Like the radio station I listened to when I was an early teenager was Eagle 106. It's no longer around. It's something else now in Philadelphia. So and they had a lot of top 40 stuff. And there was, the great thing about the late 80s and early 90s, at least for me, was there were so many types of music. And even like to this day, like I've got Sirius on my app. I'll listen to the Big 40 countdown and the Julie Brown back in the day countdowns. And basically anything from 87 to 92, I am down for. And when you listen to it, there was such a range that it was kind of like, even if I knew I wasn't in the place for me, there were so many different types of music that I always was like, there's a place for me in this world. If there's a place for all these different types of music to be on 30 or 40 songs, when you would have everything from R&B to rap to pop to country, everything in between, it really, there was just such a explosion of talent at that time. And that really helped me realize that, looking back now, I didn't realize it then, but looking back now, that really made me realize that at some point, somewhere, someday, I would find the thing that's right for me, even if most of the rest of the world didn't understand it. But that's kind of what made, people like Madonna and George Michael so unique and so special, was they didn't follow the rules. And I just always admired that about them.
Yeah. It's interesting that you brought up Julie Brown. Wow. How iconic was that young lady? She was incredible.
Absolutely.
What was her thing? Downtown Julie Brown, right?
Downtown Julie Brown, yeah, and she still says that on the Sirius show she has.
Right, but unfortunately, a lot of people don't know about her because she went into the private sector, if you will.
Yeah.
Because Sirius is private, and not everybody has it, so a lot of people are missing out on that, unless you pay for the subscription, which is worth doing, but not everybody does. And considering nowadays, besides that private sector, if you will, I don't really see people like Julie Brown out there really doing what she did and what she did for artists and for music and the trend that was going on. And she was phenomenal.
She was great. And, it's that definitely, there's a niche for everything with everyone. And I'm really grateful that I grew up at the time that I did, because there were at least still cultural unifiers. And it wasn't like one person. It wasn't just Beyonce or just Taylor Swift. Like, it's almost kind of gotten into a silo where you've literally got to be that in order to be universal. There were so many other things that were universal, even if it was only for 6 months, 3 months, 2 weeks, whatever it was, there were these unifiers that just happened that just don't necessarily exist now, because there's all these channels and all these subscriptions that you can do. And yes, you had to pay for cable, but everyone knew what MTV was. You couldn't escape it, in that era, back when they played music most of the time / some of the time. Before it was none of the time.
Now it's none of the time.
Yeah.
How interesting how that I guess that channel, if you will, went from music to reality TV. I don't even know what it is today.
I don't either. It's been a long time, and I also understand that I'm way too old for it, and I probably wouldn't like any of the musicians now, even if they were still only doing music. But what was nice about that was it reflected the time, and it kind of was a place where you could kind of go to just kind of see all types of different music, because they had various genres, and that was what was fun about it. And the 30-minute shows that they had that went along with that was, really interesting, especially like in the late 80s and early 90s.
Yeah, great stuff. So let's talk about your 10 to 20, 25, 30. Let's talk about that era of your life. What started to shape who you are today?
What started to shape me was I purposely would choose things that people didn't necessarily like or understand. And I kind of look back on that now, and I've really only realized that in the last year or so. So like, for example, I moved halfway through high school to another part of the country, and I decided that I wanted to go to the University of Iowa for college, which was nowhere near where I was living at the time. And and everyone was like, well, why Iowa? And my whole thing was that, like when I was a kid, I would see, like on a football game on Saturday afternoon, I would see those beautiful Big Ten campuses. And I was like, I want to go there. And even if I don't live in that part of the country, I want to go there. So I wound up going there because it just kind of was that picturesque college town experience. And I'm a big lover of fall, and I live in Texas now. I don't get to experience fall really. So, that really shaped me. And the thing is, I don't really have friends from college, quote unquote, but it was a time where I kind of focused on myself and what I kind of wanted to do professionally, because I changed my majors like 5, 6, 7 times. And I just realized I just wanted to get out into the corporate world and just start my path. I knew I probably wouldn't be there in 30 years, and I'm certainly not now. But that's kind of what, kind of my thinking and my thought process to do that. And, when I was in my early 20s, I wound up in the tech industry and worked for a global distributor. They're now called TD Synnex. Back then they were called Tech Data. So my first job out of college was I was basically like a product line manager. So I owned vendor relationships as a distributor. So it gave me a really excellent base and groundwork, and I'm grateful for that job and that experience every day, because if you want a good training ground, be a distribution product manager, because you market, you sell, you have to strategically plan, you have to do accounting, you have to understand finance, you have to review contracts. There's basically anything that you would want to do in business, I got to do. And in that role, I just really realized that the sky was the limit in terms of the things that I could do in my life, because I handled so many different things in so many different silos.
It's pretty cool when you think about where your life where it started, right? Where you're listening to it in your room, you're starting to do things, and all of a sudden you're in it, right? You're in it. What was that moment in time that you realized that this is really my gift? This is what I need to do?
So I will say my gift actually happened. It's funny that we're talking today. My gift actually happened a little over 20 years ago, but 20 years ago today, I moved to Austin unofficially. And, I was staying in a hotel for short-term living for a few weeks before I got my place. But I arrived on September 11th, 2004 in Austin. And when I came here like a couple weeks before, it was maybe 3 weeks before I arrived here that day for the interview that got me the job here, I just felt something on the jet bridge. It was kind of like anyone who knows Oprah or follows Oprah talked about how when she first went to Chicago, she was like, I've got to be here. I've got to be in this place. And that's exactly what I felt. And thankfully I had a job, and it was, like I said, it was a corporate job in the tech industry. I knew I wasn't going to do it forever, but that was the moment where I was like, okay, it actually all started to click for me. And I realized at that point that I had found, after many years of trying, I had found the city that was right for me at the right moment. And I had never felt that before. And once that happened, I became much more confident in myself. And, I came out and lived an open and authentic life that I wasn't able to do, or didn't feel comfortable doing. I shouldn't say wasn't able, but wasn't comfortable doing in the other places that I had been before. It just, living here it opened up the world, and I was ready for the world. But it took me 27 years to be ready for the world. It took a long time for me to come out of the shell and get out of all the fear of all those things in your past that often hold people back, to realize that what's right for you is not necessarily what other people may think is right for you in earlier aspects and earlier parts of your life.
Wow. So 27 years, huh?
20 years here today, and I was 27 when I moved. So for those who aren't good at math, I'm 47.
So think about what you could have been. What if you didn't make that move?
I'm one of those people. I used to be like, well, what if this happened, or what if that happened? I don't do that anymore, because there was a purpose. And I've lived, in the last 20 years here, I've lived the most extraordinary life. It certainly was beyond anything I ever thought that I could do growing up outside of Philadelphia and the other places that I lived. I never thought that I could have a life like this. But it started by betting on myself, one, because, when you walk off a plane and you don't know a soul, and I didn't know a soul when I moved here, wow, that's a big risk. And that's really betting on yourself. But there was just a feeling, and I trusted my feeling. Yes, it helped that I had income and a job, and I lived in a cool little, I found a cool little loft to live in. So I had all those things that had the groundwork for the confidence. But I also had worked really hard for 5 years on, in that product manager role, that I had the confidence in myself professionally as well. So it's, not just, professional confidence, it was also personal confidence. And that's what moving here really gave to me, and what brought to me.
I love that. Because it had to be scary. Like you said, getting off that plane, not knowing anyone. But you felt that your purpose was to be there.
Yes.
A calling. When did that calling really come?
I think it really came when I met my now husband in 2010. And the funny thing is that, he runs a luxury lifestyle magazine. His job was literally to go to events all the time. And I had gone to enough things that he was also at, that I was kind of shocked that I never actually met him. Or if I did, it was kind of like from across the room, didn't notice him. But that moment where I realized, okay, what's my next thing? And, I was kind of getting to the point where, because tech is a fast moving industry, and I don't mind moving fast, but it just, when I started in 2000, the vendor I managed was a vendor called Nortel Networks, which was like one of the three biggest networking vendors at the time, and they were gone in a decade. In 2001, I managed the wireless networking category at the distributor. And that was the time back in the day where anyone who's old enough to remember, there were those giant slots that you would slide a card in for wireless connectivity. And back then, basically for every connection access point, when you log in and you type in your little password to get to the internet, basically you sold 5 cards for every one of those. And by the time I left 3 years later, basically the Intel had come out with that Centrino chip that we all have today, where there's a chip in our computer, and those cards no longer existed. And I just realized that that was just a lot of fastness. And as I entered my 30s, I was like, this was really cool in my 20s. But I'm like, this is just moving too fast for me now. And then once social media came out, I met him right around the time that social media really started taking off, and everyone was on Facebook and Instagram was just about to start, that I was just like, okay, that's all too fast for me. So I'm going to make my pivot. And, very early on, I would say, we were together maybe just a month or two. And he was like, would you ever consider moonlighting, writing about, the events that you go to with me? And I was like, never thought about it. I majored in communications in college, but I never considered myself to be a writer. A lot of that was, I was the math kid in school. And this is one of the reasons why I didn't like the corporate structure as much either, is teachers pigeonhole students. They want you to be a specific thing. Corporate America wants you to be a specific thing. And this was really the first time in my life where it was like, I never thought about that. I can't believe someone's asking me to do this, because I just never occurred to me to even think that I could do that. And, I was the kid that was never invited to parties. I was the kid who would throw stuff and no one would show up. And here I am going to these things that are quote unquote glamorous. It's everything that I kind of had thought of as a kid, kind of as like a fantasy in my mind. And I was kind of living that fantasy in some way. And it just made me really realize that 90% of life is showing up. And if you show up, things will happen, and they will likely be things that a lot of people in your life at that moment may not understand. And it's okay that they don't understand. And if they can't accept you for that, they're not really loving you for you. They're loving you for what they want you to be. And, being able to go and do these things. And I've told people this in the past, it was easier to come out as gay than it was to come out as a social columnist. It was much harder on people in my world to do that. And that sounds really strange to hear, but that was my truth. I can't speak for anybody else, but for me, that was a harder experience of those two experiences, because people just didn't understand it, because people have their perceptions that galas are just rich people in fancy clothes talking about rich people things. And I've been to enough events now to know that the only events that are the good events have a mix of all different types of people. It's not just this one type, and it's not this one stereotype. And, I realized that along the way, I've always kind of challenged myself and challenged others, and sometimes challenged others to the point where it was too much for them.
Wow. When you consider what you said, it was harder to come out, right, in your profession than in your personal life.
Totally.
That's crazy, right? But it also goes to show that the acceptance of people has come around.
Yeah.
So it's a good thing. It's a good thing, right? Take a look at this for a quick sec.
In a world where words shape destinies and connections forge futures, this November 22nd to the 24th, Speaking Prowess brings you the ultimate hands-on workshop. Reserve your seat now.
Quick, come reserve your seat, because the words we say, but it's also the words we say to ourselves, right? Because when you were letting people know that this is what you're doing, and you said it was harder to come out in that realm of your professional life than your personal life, it's the words that you use to convince people that you are an authority, that you are the person that you say you are, and that they should trust in you, right?
Absolutely.
Crafting that message, it's not easy for some people. Well, how many nights did you spend going, how do I say this? How do I put this together, right?
I think a lot of it is, when you're doing, there's a level of, jealousy is the wrong word, but when you're the person who never did that, and all of a sudden you are the person always doing that,
Mm.
it can be really jarring for people. So it's, a lot of it is people fear what they don't know. And if people have to think differently about a person, because we all know, and and I struggle with this with the events that I go to, I'm not great with names.
Mm.
And people struggle with things that they're not necessarily comfortable with. And that struggle can be limiting in terms of the world that you create for yourself and the world of the things that you have around you. And I never wanted my world to be small. And a lot of people are only comfortable when their world is small. They only want 7 friends. They only want to go to the same place over and over again. They only want to hang out with a certain type of person. They only want to watch their particular football game on a Saturday. They only have these specific things. And that's just never been me. I'm too interested and fascinated with people to only be around one type of person. That's, that's tough, especially in a professional context where you're expected to be a certain type of person, interacting with certain type of people all the time. And if you do this tier in your 20s, your entry level person goes out 4 nights a week with your friends. Then in your 30s, you hit management, 40s, you hit your vice presidency, 50s, you're a top executive, and then you retire. And that works for a lot of people, but I'm too interested in other people to be comfortable with that. And I don't judge anybody for their path in life. For me, it's that wouldn't work for me. And all I really ask in return is I'll let you do whatever you want to do. Let me do what I want to do. And, so long as people can respect different backgrounds and viewpoints, I will talk with, engage, hang out with anybody.
I love that ask. Just let me be me. That's a great ask. A lot of people, they want to put you in a box.
Totally.
They want you to be this because otherwise you don't fit in our community. You're not part of it. And guess what? We don't need to be in your community, right?
No.
If you're going to put me in a box, it's not worth it. So consider everything. And you said something very important, that you enjoy people, that you don't judge what their past has been. But I think we all do it. I do it, you do it. When we see a person, we do a quick judgment.
Always. Yeah, we do.
We do, whether we want to or not. And I try not to, right? But it doesn't matter. I see a person, what they're wearing, the way they show up, their character, boom, it brings something out. But we judge visually, but we should hold up
Totally.
until we actually get to speak to them, right? So that we can judge better. So we can say, these are my people, or I need to stay away from this person. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely true. My judgment is I want to be with people that are well put together. And by that, I mean, I don't care what there are certain types of fashion that I love that I could never ever wear in a million years. But I respect the heck out of anybody that can do that and pull that off. I can't pull off certain things. It doesn't mean other people do. But to me, style and clothing is a form of communication of who you are. And people only absorb 8% of the written word. Communication, the other 92% is nonverbal. And a key component of that is attire and how you're presenting yourself in the world. And someone can wear something that's outrageous and outlandish. And I go to a lot of events that are avant-garde, but I can always tell if I'm going to engage well with somebody, because if they are wearing the clothes and the clothes are not wearing them, I'm like, I can talk to them. If they walk in and the clothes are wearing them, there's a lack of confidence that they're not able to convey. And part of it is understanding that not everything is for you and you're not for everything. And that's okay. And I think, because of the instant gratification of social media, people have gotten into everything's for me and I'm for everything. And that's exhausting, and as someone who gets lots of event invitations, I have to turn down probably 3 or 4 for every one I accept. And it's not out of malice. It's also out of me. It's, put the oxygen mask on me first and then put it on other people, and when you do stuff, and I do a lot with philanthropy. So, you want to support your friends when you can. But I also realize that if I've gone to something to support them 6 times, I can go to something else and skip a year. And it's okay to skip a year. And I found that when you don't say yes to every single invitation, there's a little bit of a mystique about you, because they're like, well, what else is this person doing?
Where's Rob tonight?
Where is he tonight? But when you don't accept everything, and people that get upset that you don't go to something that they host, if you've gone 5 times and you don't go 1 year, that reflects them, not you. And it took me a really long time to realize that if I don't do this, I'm letting them down. I've gone to enough things and been around enough good event hosts to know that by and large, the good hosts are going to be like, I totally understand. I know you've been to this 6 times before, and I know there's other things you may need to experience, see, or want to do. So coming out of COVID, and I think everybody has struggled with this coming out of COVID, is how do I prioritize my time? And that was a big thing for me too, because I was going for a long time, I'd be going to 200 events a year. Now I go to 50 to 75. I've become much more deliberate and much more intentional. And a lot of what I'll look at now at an invitation is, have I done this before? And I'll prioritize. So like I've got, 3 or 4 questions that I have in my head. And that's one of those that will elevate it on the list, that I haven't been to it before. And, if other people said, I need to go to this, I listen to all those various things, and I'll be like, you know what, I'm going to go to this. I may not get an invite for that next year because I haven't gone to it before, but I've at least gone and I've experienced it once, and I can talk intelligently about that. When people ask me about the philanthropic scene in this particular event in Dallas, Houston, Austin, San Antonio, wherever it is that I'm going.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because when you say yes to one thing, you're definitely saying no to another, and vice versa, right? You made me have this thought in my head when you talk about people going to an event and the clothes, either they're wearing the clothes or the clothes is wearing them. And it made me think of the red carpet experience. When you see these women with these elaborate, crazy dresses, I'm wondering, how do they even sit?
Sometimes they don't.
Yes.
It just kind of depends. And actually, it's funny, I have my own podcast and I did a segment on red carpets yesterday. So, what I like about red carpets is it allows everyone to feel special. That's a moment where, if you're a guest, feel special. And even if you're, I'm an introvert. So, and before I met my husband 14 years ago, I hated getting my photograph taken. I don't know why I did. I just thought I always looked awful and all this stuff. And after like the 2nd or 3rd issue of the magazine where I had written stories, my husband was like, you need to get out of your head that you're a horrible photo taker. So I have a challenge for you. And I was like, what's the challenge? You are going to include one photo of yourself in every single issue. You get to pick the event, but you're going to find, because we've been photographed at stuff, right, because he likes the camera much more than I do. But what I realized over time, and this is how I recommend people work through insecurities. Over time, what I realized was, because I had to put a photo of me after, a year or 2, I was like, objectively, I look good. Like, if I were looking at me, would I select this photo? Like, I took me out of it.
Right.
And it gave me a lot more confidence to be like, okay, I fit in and I belong here. I'm not wearing the crazy outfit. I'm much more simple. I tend to not wear prints. I tend to wear solids. I'll wear, a pocket square to kind of give myself some personality. Right. But, I'm much more restrained in my clothing, whereas my husband's much more loud. But also, that's actually good when you're a couple, because if you're both really loud, there's going to be kind of two stars. And when there's two stars, that's kind of where, tension can happen, let's just say, and people know those shows where there's two TV stars and they don't get along with one another because they're probably the same type of person. They want the attention and neither of them are getting enough attention to be satisfactory. So I'm more than happy to be that. But once I became happy with that and wore things that I knew worked for me, I had so much more confidence in everything I went to.
Yeah. Thank you for telling us that, because that really explains a lot. I'm also wondering the pressure that people, once they're told, hey, you have an invitation to be on the red carpet, you have a seat at this event, you're actually going to be, the camera's going to roll and you're going to be caught. The pressure to dress a certain way. And then, of course, so many of these outfits are worn once.
Yes.
Mega bucks, right? And it has put so much pressure, especially on the women. Listen, guys can throw on a suit, and even if they throw some color, they're going to look good. And for the women, it's become this whole elaborate adventure.
It depends on the event. At very few events, it's don't wear it again. Sustainable fashion's really in for both men and women. So a lot of people are tending to wear more vintage pieces now that have been worn before. And I'm a big believer in high-low. Like there's this one socialite I know who, and this is cheeky. It's a little avant-garde, but it's cheeky. Bought a dress from Zara and then put $1 million of jewels on to complement the $49 dress from Zara. Mm-hmm. So, I personally come from the school mix high and low, don't only do high, and don't, do have, invest in some accessories, especially if you don't have a lot of cash on you. Buy an Hermes tie, buy a Gucci belt, invest in that one piece that elevates all the $49 clothes. And I will tell you, the tuxedo jacket that I get the most compliments on, I paid $79 for. And I will wear a custom suit one night and then I'll wear that the next night and I get more compliments on the thing that's $79. It's unless you're in the fashion industry and it's a fashion specific event, most people aren't going to realize that. And dressing well, to me, is the number one indicator that someone wants to be there because they've thought about the event. Yeah. Because if you just kind of roll in, to me, that's the number one indicator. This person either doesn't want to be here or they didn't think enough about the event to put the thought in to be here. And because I'm an introvert, I like people who are very thoughtful and very intentional. So that's one of my personality traits that I'm drawn to. So that's something that I look for, and clothing for me is a way to do that. So I'm not looking for head to toe expensive. I'm looking for someone who's well put together. I could care less. And I will say, especially coming out of COVID, a lot of people do. That's not to say in some rooms they don't, but if you're in a room with 100 people, there may be 8 or 10 that care about that. The other 90 don't.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. It's very interesting when we look at a person and all they care is about their clothing instead of the quality of a person that they are.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why I love what you said about, are they wearing the clothes or the clothes wearing them?
Exactly. And there are lots of people that wear luxury brands and it's like, that's wearing you. It's not the other way around. Do what makes you feel comfortable, because people want to approach people that are comfortable. And if you're wearing something and it doesn't mesh that person, and I can't describe it. It's kind of just, energy is hard to put a finger and a pulse on. But I think everyone's been in a room where they're like, that person's really well put together, and people make a beeline for you. And there are other times where you just don't feel anyone in a room. You're like, God, I need to get out of here. So energy is just a really hard thing. It's a feeling, and just trust your instincts with that.
Yeah, absolutely. When we think about instincts, about when we meet a person, we can judge somewhat if they're a good person, right? How many people have you come across that your judgment was off? Because you go to so many events, you meet so many people. Someone will say, hey, you have to meet so-and-so, and you meet them and you get this feeling, but then you get to know them. Maybe you meet them at another event or another gathering, and all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, I was wrong at first, or I was right at first, right?
So here is what I'll say. I used to do that. Like I would say the first 3 or 4 years I went to events, I did do that. I stopped only because I realized that if I met someone once, they may have had a bad day. So I kind of had to be like, okay, how much of this is about me and how much of this is about them? And I can't tell you how many times since then, I didn't have the greatest first encounter with somebody, but I had an amazing second encounter with that person just because they were off that day. Or, if I'm going to a gala and they're hosting a table of 10 other people, that's a lot of pressure on somebody. So they may not be in the space to have a 5 or 10 minute conversation with me. So a lot of it, I think about the context of, what that person is. And I have a rule of what is an introvert versus who is someone who doesn't want to be there. An introvert is going to go from 1-word answers to 3-word answers to a sentence to a paragraph. People who don't want to be there or don't want to talk to you are going to stick to 1-word answers. And, just gauge that. Some people they may be, I don't want to say chilly. They just may take time to open up. They may be late bloomers. Lots of us know late bloomers in life. It's the same thing with events. People may just want to take time to get to know somebody and make sure that they're actually invested in actually wanting to have a real conversation with them. So, it's something that it rarely happens today. It used to happen quite a bit, but it rarely happens now because I follow that specific model of most of the time when someone is rude to you the first time, it really has nothing to do with you. It has to do with them and whatever it is that they're going through at that time.
I had a conversation with someone who actually didn't want to be at an event. And
how'd that go?
It went terrible at first. So they sat at the bar by themselves and someone next to them they thought was the same thing. That person changed their life because that person was not getting away from the event. They didn't have that feeling. They just decided they needed a little bit of time to cool off. And they started to talk to them. And the opportunity that this person got because they opened up, maybe because they had a drink.
That's a big part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe, but they didn't want to be, even though they had a drink, they still didn't want to go into the event. But the person they met was one of the main players at the event. They didn't know it.
Yeah.
And what wound up happening is that person gave them an opportunity they never imagined. But so when it comes to who do we talk to? Who do we even listen to for a minute? Just to, if they have something to say, do we take the time to even listen? Right. So take a look. This is my next one, and then we'll come back.
In a world where words shape destinies and connections forge futures, this November 22nd to the 24th, Speaking Prowess brings you the ultimate hands-on workshop. We have a lineup of some of the most influential communication experts in the industry. These are the voices that will guide you on a journey to enhance your ability to connect, influence, and succeed. Sifu Rafael, master instructor and founder of Speaking Prowess, blends communication and leadership to help you reach your full potential. Richard Walsh brings his strategic and tactical expertise to deliver rapid, lasting results for your business. Dr. Oliver T. Reed, the international multi-best-selling author and motivational speaker, known as the Writing Coach, will help you craft your messages with precision. Jose Escobar, a nationally recognized speaker and leader, will guide you in mastering personal development and leadership skills. this is more than just an event. It's a game-changing, skill-building experience. Walk away with communication prowess that transforms your personal and professional life. Speaking Prowess, where communication becomes your superpower. Reserve your seat now.
And we were talking about outfits, and you can see all four of us have different ways of dressing and being. And it's the comfort level that I think that we all need to bring when we do a presentation, a class, a course, or anything of that nature. Because if we're fussing about the clothes, then we're not being us, right?
Totally.
We're being unique into the abilities that we can bring forward.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to actually go back to something you said right before the break about the opportunity at the bar. So a lot of introverts in particular will ask me, well, what do I do at an event? I don't know who to talk to. I don't know where to begin. I always say, scan the room, look where all the bars are, find the bar with the longest line, get into that line, put your phone away, talk to the person in front of you or behind you. And the goal is not to have a life-changing thing like it was in that particular thing. It can organically happen, but it's about making you comfortable in the space. Have that 2-minute conversation. You'll feel a lot better. And then by the time you're done, you have that drink. And having something in your hand at an event, it's a good anchor. So like anyone who had a security blanket when they were a child, that's your, it doesn't have to be alcohol. It can be a soda, whatever. It can be a glass of water even, whatever it is. It's your security blanket, but you've already made it through talking to somebody. And then you've got a security blanket in the beverage that you're holding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, without a doubt. Because if you consider he did not and she did not give him her 30-second, 60-second pitch. It was just a conversation. And he actually said, what do you do? And it wasn't a pitch. It wasn't anything like that. She was genuine. So a lot of times people feel like, oh, I better have my pitch. Otherwise, I don't know. I can't go to this event. I can't function. People are not going to take me seriously. But she was just being herself. She was being real. And that's why, because I'm sure he met a lot of other people that day who he did not make that offer to. He was not trying to pick her up, so she felt the vibe was not that. It was not that whole, ooh, honey, baby, that kind of thing, which a lot of people, unfortunately, that's how they start, right? Especially if at a bar, instead of like, tell me about you. I think, and I like what you said, to find the one with the most people. And even if you find the one with the least people, at least be open if somebody says hi. Right?
Absolutely. Or talk to the bartender,
Yeah.
Have a conversation with them, find out, because a lot of people that bartend, they're going to school, they write, they have lots of really interesting stories. And I've had really, really fascinating conversations with so many bartenders over the years, with that and, and because of that. So, I'm glad we're talking about this, because there is, going back again to what we were talking about earlier, the one type of person I avoid is an uninterested one, because my whole philosophy is, in order to be interesting, you have to be interested. And we all know people where it is a completely one-sided relationship. Those people, and I can usually, because I've had enough conversations now, I can usually tell in 3 minutes if someone's going to be me, or if it's going to be we. And if it's me, that's kind of when I'll do a graceful exit and go talk to somebody else. But if it's about we, I'll have a much longer conversation, because it is a two-way investment, as opposed to someone just taking all of your energy, because they need it and they're not thinking about you.
It's very interesting that you say that as well, because I was at an event recently, and I'm talking to this gentleman, and he kept going on and on and on, and I just listened. And I saw somebody from the corner of my eye going, like they're like, oh, you got caught in this vortex, if you will. And I listened because what he was talking about was interesting, yet he really didn't care about anything that I had to say. So therefore, I didn't waste my time telling him my spiel because he wasn't going to listen anyway.
Right.
So I gave him the time of day so he can get what he wanted off his chest. Maybe he was practicing on me. I don't know. It was quite interesting. And when I got the look from this person I know, I kind of like just smiled at them and then went back to listening to this person. And how do we, as an introvert or somebody who just wants to get out of this situation, how do we navigate those waters? I know a lot of people say, oh, you know what, I got to go to the restroom. I got to go to the bathroom. You don't want to look at your watch because it's kind of rude if you're looking at your watch. This is why I don't wear a watch. So
I don't either. So we've got that in common.
I wear no jewelry, right? So at all. And when I was a kid, I used to wear the bling, the chains, the rings, all the I used to have so many different watches and chains on my wrist, and boom, that all went away because it's not about that for me, right? It's about me. So
Absolutely.
how do you suggest for someone to get out of that vortex? Like
So
put in?
It's going to sound so basic that it's going to be like, oh, why didn't I think of that? So when you are at a networking event or some other sort of event or a cocktail party or anything like that, there are 50 to 100 people there. And if there are 50 to 100 people there, you want to talk to as many people as possible. So my rule is I rarely ever talk to anybody longer than 10 minutes. Rarely, if ever, unless there's kind of like this, gosh, where have you been all my life? Like sort of connection, like, gosh, we could just talk for days. Most of the time, I'm not going to have conversations that are that long because you're there for a purpose, and the purpose is to meet people. So there is nothing wrong with that. So it's really something as simple as, I'm going to let you mingle. Have a wonderful evening. I've really enjoyed talking to you. It's that simple, especially if someone's taken up all of your time. And I always say, look for a natural pause. Yes, there are some people like you were talking about with that person. I call them wind-up toys. They just don't stop. They keep going. And a wind-up toy, that's going to be difficult. And that's kind of when you use the, I know we're all here to meet other people and to network. And, I think it would be great if we each mingled, have a wonderful evening, and it was great to talk to you. And the thing is that the people that are that involved will never ask for your contact information. And that's kind of why you're there to begin with. So it's those types of people, beware of that, because how people are in a room like that, that's kind of how they're going to be in business. If they're all me, there's not going to be a two-way partnership with whatever professional thing that you're looking to do or whatever personal friendship you're looking to forge, because who wants a friendship with somebody where you're doing all the giving and they're doing all the taking? That's not healthy for anybody.
Rob, you've been so insightful. I appreciate that. So tell us, what is it that you're currently doing and how are you helping people navigate these waters now?
Absolutely. So basically I started Event Mindset, and really I help people overcome awkwardness and anxiety at business, social, networking events so that people have more confidence, their sales grow, and they have deeper and more fulfilling customer relationships or personal relationships, depending on what it is. And I started that because in my time in the tech industry, I went to more than my fair share of really bad business meals and really bad events. And a lot of people in the corporate world can understand that. And there was a 5-year period where I was still in tech and I was doing the writing. So I would travel, and I had regional, national, and global roles. So I would be traveling all over the place. And then I'd have to come home, I'd throw on a tux and sometimes be in Austin, but sometimes have to go to another city. And I had less tolerance for bad events that I was going to in the tech industry, the more I went to successful nonprofit fundraisers that had a great mix of people, a lot of money was raised, everyone was having a good time, and people were in a good mood. And coming out of, and once after I transitioned out, I really did specifically events for a while. Coming out of COVID, I, was, and I think we all had this existential, what makes me unique? And I was like, well, this is what makes me unique. So what I've done is I've taken my experience of having gone to over 2,000 events, and I've created a guest curriculum and a host curriculum. And I have a one-on-one coaching practice where I walk people basically through step by step through each of those things. I always have people, unless they are a very expert host, they always start with the guest curriculum, because all good hosts know how to be good guests. That is the one thing that I know about anyone who hosts a successful event. They know what it's like on the other side of the chair. And that's kind of what made me start and combine those two things to really realize that. And then I also do work with organizations who are looking to make the most out of business meals, industry conferences, and things like that. Because one of the reasons that I think people dread corporate events so much, and I've seen this, is they tend to send the loudest extrovert to any event. And that may work at a football tailgate party. That doesn't work if you're going to an industry conference and the goal is, I want to get information on my competitors. I want to know what my customers are up to. That requires an introvert who's actually going to listen and take in the information. An extrovert's not going to do that. Yeah, they may have been the life of the party, but did you really get all the value out of spending that $75,000 on the booth and all that other stuff that you're going to do at that conference if you didn't find enough things out to get all that intelligence? And that's where introverts are really powerful at events. And I've been to over 2,000, and I will tell you from experience, I have never been to a successful one that doesn't have a mix of introverts and extroverts. And I view introversion and extroversion as a spectrum. So like how Oprah views sexuality as a spectrum, there is a range. Like, I can't remember if we said this on the air or not, but you said you're an extrovert, but you like your time alone. That means you're an extrovert, but it doesn't mean your tank is full. It probably means it's 3/4 full. You still have that time that you need to recharge or refill up and have that battery. So I really enjoy working with introverts in particular to realize their power and presence and how unbelievably valuable they are at events and the contributions that they make to their success that they don't think that they have. But I can tell you from experience, as the introvert who was never invited to anything, I can tell you from experience you do.
I love your take on it, and I love the way you help people understand even their role in an event, right? Because we all have a role.
Totally.
When we go to an event, how do we make the best of an event? Why should someone sponsor an event? That's a good question to consider. If you've never even sponsored an event, what benefits could somebody even have by sponsoring it?
So I would just say, if you're looking to sponsor an event, whether it's personally or corporately, you have to have an emotional tie to that, whatever it is. And it can be a professional thing. If it's addressing a professional pain point that makes your professional day miserable, that's the emotional tie. If it's a philanthropic cause, let's say you love animals, go volunteer at the local SPCA or whatever animal advocacy organization speaks the best to you, because you're going to get a lot out of that. And I highly, highly, highly recommend people join a board, because there is no better way to network and there is no better way to find other employment opportunities than joining a board, because you are going to get to see a range of people. There are many that are local. There are some that are not local, but you'll widen your network and the opportunities that come to yourselves with that. So I always say sponsor personally by joining a board, and sponsor professionally by investing some dollars back into your business community, your local community, your philanthropic community, whatever that is that is going to propel not just you forward, but those around you forward.
Beautiful, beautifully said. And you have such great insights when it comes to all of this that I encourage everybody to connect with you, right? Because you you know the ins and outs. You've been to so many events. You've seen what goes on. You probably can even help someone understand their value at an event, right? That's a critical aspect. When we go
And the thing is, good events are not star vehicles. It's an ensemble. And once you realize you don't have to be the star, it's so much easier on yourself because you don't have to be the star. And if you're an introvert, no one's expecting you to be the star. And frankly, the extroverts don't want you to be the star. So don't be something that you're not.
that is the best tip. Don't be something you're not. I agree with that one 100%. Rob, I got to thank you so much for today. You not only taught us, but you entertained us throughout the show. Thank you for your time today. I'm really blessed that you said yes to coming on the show.
Sifu, this was wonderful, and I'm really excited. I know we've got another live stream scheduled and coming up, and I can't wait to be a part of it. So thank you for having me.
Bless you, my friend, and keep being awesome. Everybody, thank you for joining us today. And if you watch this on the replay, hit hashtag replay and let us know your thoughts. And like I said, reach out to Rob, and we'll see you guys next time. Take care.